Welcome everybody, and welcome to my fellow administrators, our Chief Executive Officer, General Managers, and a very good evening to everybody who is joining us via our live stream this evening. It's great to have everyone on board. As always, we commence our meeting with acknowledgement of country. At the commencement of each regular meeting, we acknowledge that we meet on the Dja Dja Wurrung country. Tonight, as I've said before on a number of occasions, we have participants who are located on traditional lands of the Dja Dja Wurrung, the Tanarung, the Jabberjali, the Jabberung peoples. And of course, if you're watching from home, you may be located on land that is of other traditional lands. And so we respectfully acknowledge tonight the traditional owners right across the country. We pay our respects to leaders past and present and emerging, and recognise that they hold the memories, the traditions, cultures and hopes of all Indigenous peoples. Our hope is that we might walk together in harmony and a spirit of healing and cooperation. With that, I will declare our meeting open and open with our prayer. Almighty God, we ask your blessing upon our deliberations this evening, to guide and prosper our deliberations for the advancement of the people of the Central Goldfields Shire. Amen. My apologies, I got that one a little bit mixed up. I don't have it printed anymore. I used to have a printed version of the prayer. I don't have it anymore. So my apologies if I messed that one up just a little bit. We don't have any apologies for this evening's meeting, and we don't have any leave of absences noted. So I'll ask if anybody has a conflict of interest that they need to declare.
No.
No conflict of interest. So we will then move on directly with the agenda this evening. Item number 5 is the confirmation of the minutes of the previous council meeting, which have been held back on the 25th of August.
Mr. Chairman,
Sorry, Hugh, you go.
Go on, Hugh.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move the council confirms the minutes of the council meeting held on the 25th of August 2020.
Okay, it has been moved. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Been seconded. Okay, I'm going to put it to the vote in favour. Say
Yes.
aye.
Aye.
Against is carried. Thank you. Item number 6, the reports from committees. We don't have any committee reports this evening. We have no petitions to consider under item 7, which brings us then to the officer reports that we have in front of us this evening. The first item is 8.1. This is the Northern Victorian Integrated Municipal Emergency Management Plan, which is being presented for our consideration this evening.
And I would like to move the motion, which is, I think, on page 7.
7, yep.
The council endorsed the Northern Victorian Integrated Municipal Emergency Plan with the 2 minor changes listed in the report section of this document. Okay,
it has been moved and seconded, Mr. Delahunty. Yes.
Happy to second that, Mr. Chairman.
It's been moved and seconded. Do you wish to say anything about this one, Mrs. Douglas?
Yes, I would. It's a very important plan, really, with emergency management flavour of the month, I suppose. Well, not the month, but it's certainly front of mind for councils. And this is really the second version of this plan that was endorsed. The first one was endorsed, I think, in late 2017. And it's about the cluster of the councils working together and collaboratively, and that's City of Greater Bendigo, Loddon, Central Goldfields, Campaspe and Mount Alexander Shire. Obviously, there's a lot of our staff who's involved in any emergency incident, and they have been involved in this review of the first plan. I think that involved about 20 of our staff. There's been some major changes that have been included, and just to quickly run through those, there's a climate change lens has been given to the plan, inclusion of emergency management legislation amendment bill 2018 planning reform, membership of the committee, demographic information in relation to the traditional custodians of the land, updated history of local emergencies, updated community emergency risk assessment data, more detailed information in relation to the different tiers and response arrangements, inclusion of the evacuation process, inclusion of the Bushfire Recovery Victoria, a new dedicated government agency, and updated the standard operating procedures. But the two minor changes are the ones that actually reflect the changes that we particularly wanted to have included. There's the way the plan works, there is an appendix for all of those local government areas so that they all are reassured that their particular shires have been dealt with as would be for their own council. So the other point to this, I suppose, that is important is that in the event of an emergency, if it can be contained within that particular municipal boundary, then that council deals with it. It's only when an emergency then emerges and either our resources are exhausted or the emergency then is affecting more than just within our own boundaries. So it's a very clever way of actually being prepared. We can share skills, information, data, equipment, whatever. And if people are aware of this and they've been networking with the cohort of people involved, and it does include all of the people that you would expect who would be included in an emergency management plan. So I think this is a really important, and I think it's really important that our community realise that this plan is there in case it's needed. The two minor changes really, one was really a correction in a date. The other one's a bit more meaningful, and it was about changing the wording. And the wording that was to be amended is flooding has occurred on many occasions, although the populated areas, except for the land along the Burnt Creek in Denali and areas of Carisbrook, in particular south of the Pyrenees Highway, are not susceptible to heavy flooding. It's not a major change we're requesting, but it is just a little bit more emphasising that it does happen. It's not really to be diminished. And so the wording we're suggesting is flooding has occurred on many occasions, although the populated areas are not susceptible to heavy flooding, except for the land along Burnt Creek in Denali and areas of Carisbrook, in particular south of the Pyrenees Highway. So we felt it was important that wording was actually reflecting that this actually can very quickly become very flooded. So with that minor two changes, happy to support and endorse this new version of the emergency plan.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Mr. Delahunty, did you wish to add anything to that?
No, not tonight, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. Just by word of explanation, it may seem a little strange, though, to some people that we are, in fact, adopting a plan this evening, which requires a couple of adjustments to it, which is quite unusual. The fact is that this is not just our document. This is a regional document, and those changes have to be endorsed by the regional group. So this will now go back with those minor changes that we requested to be included in the final document. There was insufficient time for us to the committee doesn't meet that often, and it was important we get this finalised. So that's why we are adopting a report this evening that does require a couple of minor changes. So I'm going to put the motion. The motion is that Council endorse the Northern Victorian Integrated Municipal Emergency Plan with the two minor changes listed in the report section of this document. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? That's carried. Thank you. Moving on then to item 8.2, a major piece of work, this one, which is the draft Active Central Goldfields Recreation and Open Space Strategy. This is a piece of work that has been underway for many, many months now, and this is the final piece in the puzzle as it comes to Council for adoption this evening. The motion in relation to, or the recommendation in relation to this item is on page 13 of the agenda for anybody in the public who is following the meeting this evening.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that Council adopt the Active Central Goldfields Recreation and Open Space Strategy in the form of the attached draft, Volume 1, with minor changes as recommended in attachment 7.
Okay, thank you very much. Mrs. Douglas, you wish to second that?
I will.
Happy to second that? Okay, it's been moved and has been
Yes.
seconded. Mr. Delahunty, I know you've been chairing this committee, and I know you'll have something to say about this particular report, so it's over to you.
Well, Mr. Chairman and my fellow administrators and staff, we've been on this long road together. I think when I arrived at the council, I was lobbied by many sporting groups and community people about sport and recreation and active space in the Shire. And I was amazed to see how many facilities that we had, some maintained in reasonable conditions, some poorly. A lot of them are on Crown land, so they weren't all our responsibility. But we needed to have some long-term strategy so that council can work with the volunteers, the community groups, the sporting groups right across the Shire. So this draft, we call it the ROS now, it's Recreation and Open Space Strategy. I'll abbreviate it to the ROS report in my comments here tonight. But it does provide a clear direction for the provision, the development and management of high quality open space sport and recreation opportunities and support services and spaces and facilities right across the Shire. In doing this work, we've now got an inventory we've never had before. We've got an updated inventory of all the facilities that our community work with and recreate with right across the Shire. The purpose of this strategy, as has been outlined in the report, is to guide the council in the community decision making for the next 10 years. So it's been a power of work to get us to where we've got. We appropriated $30,000 in the 2019-20 budget. We were successful in getting money from sport and recreation to match that. So after a competitive tendering process, we've appointed OPM Planning Group to develop the ROS for the next 10 years, from 2020 to 2029. It involved an enormous amount of consultation. I have to congratulate the consultants for the work they did in consulting with not only the sporting groups, but also the broader communities, a lot of user groups, and also looking at regional and state and national participation data, which has obviously helped in guiding this ROS report. We had the draft ROS report original draft ROS report was put out for public comment back in July for a 4-week period, and we value the input from those people. I want to say though that will really support the strategic decision making for council for recreation planning, but also enhance the council's capacity to advocate to state and federal governments for funding. I can assure you that governments of all ilk will not talk to people unless they've done the strategic work. And this work will give us a good guidance to be able to lobby state and federal government, because we can't do it without their support. I also want to say a big thank you to the enormous number of volunteers that work in sport and recreation right across our Shire, in fact, right across our communities. And this report will help guide and support them in their work. We've even put up a business case for a 10-year financial commitment of $10,000 to assist in the implementation of this strategy, particularly to support the volunteers over the period. But there's also $50,000 in this year's budget to help with the implementation, but also another $20,000 for further planning work that needs to be done. But to prosper in our Shire, for our sport and recreation users to prosper, the recreation sector is highly dependent on volunteers, but it's also highly dependent on having facilities that are up to standard, and also the resources to help with the skill development of many of our sporting champions. If Central Goldfields Shire is to address the serious health impacts, and I have to say I'm really fearful, it's not only in our Shire but right across our communities. We've got an obesity problem, a type 2 diabetes problem, and we need to make sure that we get people active in sport and recreation. I've always said I want to see more people, more active, more often. We need facilities, we need support from councils, we need volunteers, we need a lot of those people working together to enable that to happen. So this documentation, this report will help in that phase. Also, the consultants have developed a matrix which will help enormously in the application of capital works and facilities to be upgraded. I want to finish off, Mr. Chairman. I want to really say that I congratulate the consultants. I thank the support of the steering group that was really done the work. I thank the enormous work has been put in by our staff over many, many months, but I also want to thank the input from the community in general for what we've got. This report, the Ross report, provides a clear vision and a framework for participation in sport and recreation within the Central Goldfields Shire. The key areas of focus which aim to make more people more active more often are in three categories. They are active places and spaces, active clubs, volunteers, and a recreation sector, and importantly, an active community. Some of the key projects identified in the strategy, and there's many of them, but I want to highlight a couple of them, is a new multi-purpose rectangular fields complex in Maryborough, the development of the Princess Park Master Plan, the development of physical activity communities, but importantly, the development of leadership opportunities for young people and women in our community. I have to say that it is a very worthwhile document. I'm pleased to move this motion. I wish it well for the next 10 years and thank the people involved in where we've got to today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much for that. Mrs. Douglas, do you wish to make any comments?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Okay. Before I put it to the vote, I'd just simply like to point out a couple of things. Firstly, that Mr. Delahunty has already alluded to the fact that this is a 10-year plan. It is a significant piece of work, and it's one that has been worked on now for many, many months. And it was a piece of work that was identified very early on that we actually needed to undertake. There is no doubt that Central Goldfields Shire and Maryborough in particular has a long history of producing exceptionally talented and capable sportsmen and women, and has a long tradition, if you like, in that space. But this isn't just about sports. This is about recreation of all sorts, and including our open spaces. But it was very clear to us early on, as Mr. Delahunty said, that despite that very strong focus that this community has had on the sporting activities in the past, the infrastructure that they have been operating in to a large point is substandard and has no driving plan, no driving strategy to improve or to redevelop or to expand those facilities. This is that plan, and this is going to be put in place for the next 10 years. This is not a short-term fix. We have understood right from day one this is a massive task and is going to require a significant financial commitment from future councils for the next possibly 3 or 4 councils to make the commitment that's going to be needed to implement this plan. This is just the start. And I'm very, very proud that we can put our names to this and say we've actually now, for the first time, Central Goldfields has a comprehensive plan to develop, redevelop, improve and expand our recreation and open space facilities in the Shire. And I commend it to everybody to have a read, to all the sporting clubs to get on board and do what you can. It's a great lobbying document, and I'm sure that the Minister for Sport and Recreation and Federal won't be thanking us for the work that we've done here, because I'm sure the Central Goldfields Shire will be knocking on the door for the next 10 years as we try to raise the funds to implement this plan. So I commend it to you, and I'm going to put it to the vote. The recommendation is on page, I can't find it, on page 13. The Council adopt the active Central Goldfields Recreation and Open Space Strategy in the form of the attached draft, Volume 1, with minor changes as recommended in Attachment 7. Those in favour of the motion, say aye.
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 Against? That's carried. Thank you. Excellent. An exciting piece to see a piece of work like that finally finished. And
Yeah.
Mr. Delahunty can breathe a sigh of relief. We got it over the line. So that's a very important step forward. Okay, let's move on now to item, where are we up to? The 8.3, which is another very, very important piece of work, which we started talking about very early on. This is our draft integrated transport strategy that has been presented for our consideration and adoption this evening. The recommendation in relation to this item is on page 17 of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move the Council adopt the integrated transport strategy in the form of the attached draft, Attachment 1.
Thank you. Mrs. Douglas, you're happy to second that?
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Mr. Delahunty, over to you again.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Look, transport is a critical need for our rural communities, and whether you live in Maryborough, Talbot, Denali, all the towns, communities in between, we need to ensure that we've got good transport connections, good transport infrastructure. And so we're very pleased to be able to tonight adopt this new integrated transport strategy. We did it in cooperation with the Victorian Government Department of Transport. We've developed this integrated transport to demonstrate how council needs to address some of the connections within our community, but importantly, transport needs right across the municipality. We know, a lot of us, we think we know how it works, but this report really links it all together, and it demonstrates and it outlines how transport options could be improved with a little bit of tweaking here and there. The strategy has explored current transport networks, including active networks where people ride bikes or hop on skateboards, whether it be public or private, and community transport, whether it be school buses, whether it be normal transport needs, taxis and all that. It's all in this report. I commend the consultants for the work they've done. The work has been done over the last 8 months, and council were very pleased to be able to work with the consultants. It looks at active and engaged. We want to see an active and engaged community. We want to see safe and healthy townships. We want to see a vibrant and mobile economy. But we also have to make sure that if we're going to have a connected Shire, we need to make sure we've got an integrated transport network and opportunities for people to be able to move around. Obviously there was a lot of consultation work went on, and I know there was a draft report that went out. It was a little bit impacted because of COVID, but I want to say a big thank you to the consultants, the way they've worked with our staff, with the community to develop what we've got here today. It was a prolonged consultation period. There was a lot of stakeholders involved, and various sectors of the community were involved accordingly. But I want to finish off by saying, Mr. Chairman and my fellow Administrator Douglas, we've got a fantastic document. It's easy to read. It's gives us a lot of direction, and again, a good strategy document for the incoming council to work with governments, work with the community, and importantly, get a better, I believe, a better integrated transport network across the Shire. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Mrs. Douglas, you wish to say anything?
Look, I will just make a few comments. It's been quite a long journey, and I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if our consultants actually were quite surprised at how complex our particular situation is. And it's not just about freight and rail and road, of course, it's also about other things like cycling and how we can accommodate getting children safely to school, encourage them perhaps not to be dropped off all the time by their parents. But if it's not safe for those children to walk to school, why would the parents send them anyway? So it's been, I think, a bit of an eye-opener about here we are sitting in the middle of Victoria, and you would think that we would have options to spare. But when it boils down to pretty much almost total reliance on people owning a car and being able to service their own needs of their families, whether it's for work or for sport or for school or education, what have you. And I think this document actually does touch on the positives, of course, but it does actually capture the complexities of what it is. We'll have to use this document when we start to lobby for things like making sure that trains and buses actually are coordinated so that we get the best value out of the limited public transport that we may have across our Shire and coming in and out of our Shire. So it's a very interesting read. I think it's going to take quite a bit like the Ross strategy, actually. This will not be happening overnight, I imagine. It's going to take some time, but it will actually be supporting our case, if we can, to particularly get some some additional rail services coming into our shire, and also from the coaches and the buses that go through our shire. Often they're coming through at very unfriendly times, apparently. So I think that it really will help future councils argue some recognition for the challenges that we face. And even with our roads are quite tricky for people to drive on. That quite often they're shared with transport. Buses, of course, one of that. But also we've got some wildlife that love whipping out in front of various vehicles. We've got hills, we've got some, we've got the whole lot. So I think it's actually been a very interesting journey for the people that we were working with over this, and I'm very pleased with the document that we've got to leave for the future council to use.
Okay, thank you very much for that one. The only comment I would make is acknowledge the commitment the state government has given to us in terms of funding this particular report and the previous one. They were both assisted. We would not be able to produce these important documents without the support of the state government. And this is one, again, is one of those long documents that had a long, long journey to get to this particular point of time. And I have to say how delighted I am that we're actually able to sign this one off before we depart. And again, it's a perfect opportunity for an incoming council to pick up and implement over the coming years. So I congratulate everybody concerned with this one, particularly some of our staff I know have worked very hard on this one. It's been a long, tricky and sometimes a winding journey, a bit like some of our roads and our transport system. But I think we now know what we've got, and we can know how we can make it work better, and we know where the gaps are. And this is a very important plan, and I commend it again to the community to have a look and help council as we implement this one going forward. So the motion is on page 17. The council adopt the integrated transport strategy in the form of the attached draft attachment 1. I'm going to put it to the vote. Those in favour say aye.
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 Against? That's carried. Thank you. Moving on now to item 8.4, which is an item which is in relation to the Carisbrook Road and Levy construction contract. This is for information as much as anything else, but the report is commences on page 18, and the recommendation that we're considering this evening is on page 20.
And I will move the council note contract number G1441 2020 Carisbrook Road and Levy construction has been awarded to Doran Earth Moving Proprietary Limited.
Thank you very much, Mr. Delahunty. Happy to second that.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, it's been moved and it's been seconded. Mrs. Douglas, I know you're going to have something to say about this one.
I have to have a little bit to say, don't I? I imagine everybody understands what this project is all about, but just in case they don't, just a tiny bit of background that this is all about Carisbrook and the flooding that really took place in September of 2010 and 11. And the consultants Water Technology completed the Carisbrook Flood and Drainage Management Plan for the North Central CMA in 2013. Since the development of the plan, various stages of the recommended flood mitigation works have been implemented. We're already constructed stage 1, which is the Western Levee at Pleasant Street and the levee north of the railway line, and stage 2, which is the Williams Road levee. The remaining construction required for the completion of the levee is stage 3, Western Levee, which is railway line to the Pyrenees Highway. And finally, the last stage will be stage 4, the Western Levee south of the Pyrenees Highway. The contract actually was for stage 3, and it's been publicly tendered, and it will include the Levee Road construction along Pleasant Street from the Pyrenees Highway to the railway line, and the road construction along High Street from the railway line to Church Street. The sections of the levee works containing the culvert construction will be undertaken in a later stage, as approvals and land acquisition are still in the actual last stages of being formalised. Doran Earth Moving is a local business which has successfully undertaken various large construction projects for our community, and I must say we were very pleased with the interest shown in this particular contract and delighted that Doran Earth Moving has achieved winning that contract and happens to be a local business, which is really, we're very pleased about. We're expecting that the construction works will commence forthwith and hopefully will be completed by the end of the calendar year. The report really is to inform council that the contract has been awarded under the CEO's financial delegation to Doran Earth Moving. But because of the interest around the Carisbrook levy and the whole project of the flood mitigation, we preferred that it come through council. And before I close, Mr. Administrator, I would just like to add a little bit, because this has been such a project that's we inherited when we came, and as our time is now closing, not far off, I just felt it would be an opportunity for me to make a couple of comments. Obviously, none of us were local and none of us had participated in the community consultations that led to the development of the plan, which was accepted, I think, finally 2014. And we all felt it was imperative that we worked with a small group of local people who'd be able to provide us with the history, the advice, also be able for them to share the journey as much as possible with us. Over time, the size of the small group dwindled for a host of various reasons. We have a remaining two who have certainly delivered all of the expectations that we would have had of them in their duties, with diligence, at times understandably with passion, but at all times nonetheless just representing the safety and the welfare of the community of Carisbrook as their focus. As there's shortly going to be local representation for Carisbrook, our committee will no longer be required, and I would like to request that the dedication that they've shown to this complex task be recognised. So I'm hoping that a letter can be sent, a letter of appreciation to be sent to Pat Coots, Mrs. Patricia Coots, and Mr. Keith McLeish, thanking them for lasting the journey and for the important role that they have played in progressing this extremely important project. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Delahunty, did you wish to make any comments on this one?
Oh, look, just some quick comments, Mr. Chairman. Look, when we arrived as administrators, we were thoroughly briefed on the background to this works we're doing tonight. We were made aware, and we were obviously all aware of the major floods that impacted not only on Carisbrook, but also on Denali back in the 2010-2011 period, but particularly on Carisbrook, there was enormous damage done there. So we were also told of the many challenges that we had in front of us to get to where we are tonight. I'm pleased to say, with the good work of yourself, Mr. Chairman, and Administrator Douglas, and the support of a lot of other people, including our staff who've been working behind this, we've got to this stage. I'm really pleased to say that, as Administrator Douglas said, stages 1 and 2 had been done many years ago, but it took a lot of work to be able to get to what we're doing tonight, and that is awarding the contract or agreeing to the contract for stage 3. I know it's been approved by our CEO, but I want to say that we're very pleased to see that local contractors have got the job, but I am absolutely delighted that we are seeing work being done, because I thought we could get on and do this a lot quicker than we did, but it took a lot of work, and thankfully through the perseverance by a lot of people, we've got there. So well done to all those people, and congratulations to the local contractor. It is a job that I'm sure will be welcomed by particularly by the Carisbrook community, but particularly by the Central Goldfields Shire. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for those comments. And I'll just simply add my very brief comments to this one. I just want to congratulate Ms. Stockfield and your team for your resilience through this extraordinary project, particularly Lee Hendricks, who's has I think probably been on this project from day one and is still on the project. And I think we should acknowledge the tenacity of that team. They've been under immense pressure from all sorts of directions, but we are now actually at the point of delivering. And can you please pass on our appreciations to your team for the work that they have done, because I think it must be recognised. Mrs. Douglas has acknowledged the community, some of those community representatives. I don't think a week would have gone by in the last 2.5 years when the subject of the Carisbrook levy has not been discussed in some form, some meeting, or some of our general gets together about the progress on this one. It has been front of mind from almost from day one. And yes, it has been an extraordinary, complex and time-consuming and very, very frustrating. And we've only had to deal with it for 3 years. So I just want to say thank you to everybody who have hung in to get us to this particular point. It is I can't wait to see that earth-moving machinery out there, and I'm very delighted to be saying before we leave, we actually have got something happening. And to those people who never believed me when I said we will get something happening here before we finish, I absolutely does say, well, we did make it, only by a few weeks, but we have in fact made it. So thank you to everybody concerned. It's a mammoth effort. And now, of course, stage 4 is in well and truly in our sights, and I look forward to driving down the Pyrenees Highway in the coming years. We'll look across both north and south of the highway and actually seeing the levy in place. So thank you to all, and I'm going to put the motion, which is on page 20 of the report, the council note contract G1441/2020 Carisbrook Road and Levy Construction has been awarded to Doran Earth Moving Proprietary Limited. I'm going to put that motion. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, that is carried. Should also add to my comments there how great it is to see local contractors putting their hands up. Local contractors employing local people on local projects. Nothing better. And I think this is a great example of how local government can actually help the recovery by ensuring that local people are employed in projects like this. And I know that our CEO is very focused on making sure that we do everything we can to, and all those projects that we've got coming up, and there's many millions of dollars going to be expended. We're going to maximise every opportunity we can to make sure that locals are employed and get the benefit of these particular projects. Okay, let's move on to item 8.5. which is the Central Goldfields Shire Economic Response and Recovery COVID-19. A comprehensive report has been prepared there, and the recommendation is on page 24. The council endorsed the act. Sorry, I'll recommend on page 24. I'll leave the motion, the mover to read out the motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move the council endorse the actions taken in response to the economic impacts of COVID-19 pandemic.
Okay, thank you for that. Do we have a second, Mrs. Douglas? You happy to second that?
Yes, I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Mr. Delahunty.
Mr. Chairman and Administrator Douglas and staff and all the people listening in tonight, we're still in the difficult times of COVID. We're pleased to see today the Premier's announced that there will be a fairly big step forward in regional Victoria, but obviously Melbourne is still in the depths of the impact of COVID. But as we all remember, COVID started early in this year, and right at the start, we adopted a task force, which was to really help advise council on the economic response and recovery coming out of, hopefully we'll get out of this COVID pandemic sooner rather than later. The task force was involved where we advertised for expression of interest. We got 10 local businesses ranging from various sectors right across, whether it be farming sector, small business, large business, importantly, people involved in business right across our shire. One of the first things our staff did was to contact over 300 businesses to update not only their records and contact details, but also have, so we've got a good database of that there now, but also more importantly, to be able to see how they were travelling, but also now we can get information out to them through various newsletters that we send out, which is not only our information, but information coming out of federal and state government. We've obviously done a lot of work, and that we used to meet every fortnight. We've dropped it back to every 3 weeks at this stage. but there was a lot of work being done around business activation. And that was the Go Locals First. We've had the Jumpstart High Street program, the Better Approvals program to fast track things within the Shire. And we did that in partnership with the Committee of Maryborough, and we thank them for their support. The Better Approvals program, and also the Small Business Friendly Charter, which we've adopted as a council to try and fast track some of the things we do within council to support a lot of our businesses across the Shire. I want to say we've picked up under Martin Collins and Rebecca Stockfield, the Emma Little, who's come to our staff and doing a lot of work around how we can promote our region coming out of COVID. And there's been work done on a TV campaign, on social media. We've got our library, image libraries being developed further. But I want to say that we've developed a Central Goldfields promotional group, and they're discussing ways to make sure that we've got quality marketing, because no doubt everywhere in Victoria will be marketing to other places in Victoria and interstate, and hopefully one day we might even get international tourist back. Only last week, Mr. Chairman, you and myself were involved with the launch of the next stage of the Goldfields World Heritage Listing, which is a long way to go, but again highlights that there's things going on to promote our region. As I said, the task force was established in May. We've done a lot of work. We've talked with various government ministers and local members. The Committee of Maryborough has been very supportive, and I thank them for their work. But finishing off, from council's point of view, we altered its resource allocation. We've also got a COVID transitional plan to help those businesses severely impacted by this, and we're also looking at how that will go on after September. But as you said in the last project, Mr. Chairman, it's about employment and getting people back into the community with jobs. We've got in this year's budget, which we approved only a short period of time ago, nearly $16 million capital works budget, which is supported by state and federal government. And many of those projects will allow for the employment of local people, as the last topic we talked about here, whether it be the upgrade to our community halls and facilities, the town hall, Talbot Town Hall toilets, the Central Goldfields Art Gallery redevelopment. There are many projects which will help employ people to help in the assistance of getting out of this COVID. So I want to say thank you to the work being done by our staff, but particularly thank you to the task force, those 10 people that have been involved. We're getting to where we are today. So hopefully we're on the road out of this pandemic, but we've still got a long way to go. So it's important we do this in a strategic way to support our local businesses and our local employment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Douglas.
Just a few comments. Firstly, I would just like to reinforce how important it is that we've been so successful in getting both state and federal funding for some of these projects, and we've been able, therefore, to reallocate and have a look at that, so that those projects that will be requiring local materials and staff, hopefully they will be able to benefit from this. I know a lot of effort has gone into how we can actually help have the impact of COVID right across the community. And I think one of the good things that's come out of this is actually the relationship between council and our business community. And I'm sure that's been strengthened by the committee that are now working so diligently, particularly with Mr. Stockfield on this and Administrator Delahunty on this. And I hope that will continue, because I think that's just been a wonderful way of actually keeping as current as council possibly can, I suppose, and being known really how, if there is help needed, can council actually do something about it to alleviate it. And I think that's the real benefit from this. So well done, and good luck to everybody. It's going to be quite interesting coming out of this one. So thank you for the opportunity to speak.
No, thank you very much for those comments. I want to congratulate again those people that has already been referred to, the industry in particular. Whilst we talk a lot about our capital works projects, And whilst they are wonderful to have and the community will get a great benefit from those, I think there is no simple answer to the pandemic and the situation we find ourselves in. There are many, many components of this, and that's very, very frustrating because small rural councils simply don't have the resources or the wherewithal, either financially or people-wise, to actually drive some of these. And I know it's very, very frustrating because no one actually knows what the right answer is. But I think whilst we talk a lot about the major progress that we have, I think our tourism sector is one of those sectors that is struggling extremely at the moment. And I think we are looking very firmly at how we can assist them. And I want to say congratulations to the tourism group that are sitting on there trying to work ways that we can actually support them. And I know it's terribly frustrating, but I can assure everybody who's associated council is doing all that it can within our limited capacity to support our sector. And I want to say the answers to the solution, the answers to the challenges that Central Goldfields have, I've said it before many, many times, are contained within the community. Yes, the money coming from outside is fantastic, but the actual real stuff, the stuff that's lasting, is going to make a long-term difference, is the community itself. So we have a wonderfully engaged community. And I think I would like to say this was planned, that we would be adopting this particular report this evening, but I think it was probably more good luck than good management, particularly when we talk about our tourism sector as we're starting to open up. And I know there's 3 people today that I've already spoken to who said they're already planning, where can we go? We've been shut up for so long. People saying, where can we go to get out? And of course, we want them to come to Central Goldfields. So we are very fortunate in terms of our timing. So again, I commend this one. And the recommendation is this evening that the council endorses the actions being taken in response to the economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm going to put it to the vote. Those in favour say aye.
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 It is carried. Thank you very much. Moving on now to item 8.6, which is our planning scheme amendment. And a very comprehensive and long report that's attached to this one that I hope everybody can follow, because it's a fairly complex, it looks fairly complex, but it's nowhere near as complex as it actually looks once you start reading the detail. But the recommendation in relation to this report is on page 30.
And I'd like to move the council firstly seek authorisation from the Minister for Planning for the amendments CO34CGOL in the form of the attached draft amendment documents, attachments 1 to 10, to delegate the General Manager, Assets and Infrastructure and Planning to make minor changes to the amendment in consultation with the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning, and 3, place the amendment on public exhibition in accordance with the Planning and Environmental Act 1987 after receiving authorisation from the Minister for Planning.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Do I have a second, Mr. Delahunty?
Second that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Mrs. Davis, do you wish to make any comments on this one?
Just to sort of perhaps clarify what it is quite an involved procedure, and this is about we're actually hoping to resolve to commence the process for a planning scheme amendment, which is quite a serious task. Council adopted a planning scheme review in May of this year, and the review noted that the planning scheme had not been effectively reviewed and updated in previous 4-year cycles, and that many provisions within it were out of date. The previous review in 2013 was adopted by Council and forwarded to the Minister for Planning, but not implemented through a planning scheme amendment. So there's been quite a lot of change, as you could imagine, since then, everywhere here, but also in the Victorian planning provisions. So it's high time that this actually has finally been again addressed. So the Minister for Planning has also approved a translation of the planning scheme into a new format, and we talked about that a little bit when we adopted the review earlier, which is going to make it much easier for people to understand, hopefully. So, and people may recall just how many major strategies have come through Council, particularly in this last 6 months or so. Even tonight, we've got huge strategies, and that have been developed that will need to be included. And some of those are our population housing and residential strategy, the community plans, recreation open space tonight, economic development strategy, tourism and events strategy. And there's also relevant directions from the Sustainability Action Plan, the Rural Land Capability Project, and the Integrated Transport Strategy again tonight. So there's a lot that has to find its way into our planning scheme. It's the guiding decision-making tool for council, so it's a really important document. And I think what is good about this is that it's really a situation now where all this work needs to be gathered together and taken to the minister for his approval, of course, but actually we will not be here to actually then initiate and run with this particular process. So we will be wrapping it all up in a nice bundle, goes to the minister, it'll come back, but the community consultations probably may not even start till early next year. So this will be one for the administrators to sort of watch from afar, but it's really a very timely, I think, resolution to move this one tonight. So, yeah, it should be a very interesting journey, and I think with all of those changes that now have to be included, it's certainly going to be a very much revamped planning scheme for Central Goldfields. So well done to everybody who's been working on this. It's probably been an absolute nightmare, I would think, to make sure that everything has been finally included, and there's a fair way to go yet. So good luck.
Indeed. Thank you very much. Mr. Delahunty?
No, I don't. Look,
Okay.
I will make some quick comment. Planning is the documents are critical for anything that happens within the Shire. So look, this is a major step forward. It's again, one of the things that was really, I think, missing from when we arrived. So I'm pleased to see that the work we've done over the last couple of years is coming to fruition with this document. There's a few more steps to go, but importantly, we've made a big progress from where we started. Well done to the team.
Indeed. And when I read these documents, I then understand why I never became a land use planner. I don't have the patience. So well done to all concerned. So the motion is on page 30. The council seek authorisation from the Minister for Planning for the amendment CO34 CGOL in the form of the attached draft amendment documents. Delegate the General Manager Assets and Infrastructure and Planning to make minor changes to the amendment in consultation with the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning, and place the amendment on public exhibition in accordance with the Planning and Environment Act of 1987 after receiving authorisation from the Minister for Planning. Those in favour of the motion say aye.
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 Against, that is carried. Okay, moving on to item 8.7, which is a planning application, yet another planning application for a non-illuminated promotional sign on the highway in Flagstaff.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move the recommendation as outlined on page 41, or starts on page 41, with the recommendation, which includes 11 conditions.
Thank you. Mrs. Douglas, do you wish to make any comments on? Sorry, are you happy to second this one?
I will second it.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded. Mr. Delahunty.
Mr. Chairman, we're all well aware that this is a planning permit to put up a major promotional sign on 4257 Pyrenees Highway, Flagstaff. As we are all well aware, this is a third type of application we've had for a similar. We've had two similar applications for a similar sign to this on the Pyrenees Highway. This application arrived with us on the 2nd of June this year. But again, we as a council, we've got to deliberate on that, even though the first two applications, which were in different positions, which were closer to Carisbrook than Maryborough, we had two similar applications, which were in rural landscape areas. And that was one of the reasons why we rejected or refused the first two. There was other conditions around those two refusals. Both of those refused applications were taken to VCAT by the applicants, but I'm pleased to say VCAT supported the council decision to refuse the application. This one is a little bit different. It is still on the Pyrenees Highway. It's at Flagstaff between Carisbrook and Maryborough, but this time it's in a different position, which is a little bit like an industrial area with a lot of industrial works going on in that position. The report is a fairly extensive report. It covers the proposal, which, as we all know, it's highlighted by the application, is a non-illuminated promotional sign. It is set back 2 metres from the chain fence, so it's a fair distance away from the highway. Surprises me, and it's on the inside corner of or curve of the Pyrenees Highway when you're travelling from Carisbrook into Maryborough. Again, the report covers a lot of issues, whether it be the site and surrounds. As it says in the report, this is more of an industrial type area, but it covers a lot of things, whether it be the overlays, the planning policies, the general provisions. But importantly, it covers the fact that we've referred this to 2 government departments, that one being the Department of Land, Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning. They had no objection and no conditions. But the interesting one was VicRoads, who also had no objection and no conditions. Personally, I think we've got far too many signs on our highways, and where we want signs to alert us to safety issues or that type of thing, I think we've got too many signs. But importantly, we've got to work under the planning conditions. We're obliged to work under that. And I think the planners have come up with a reasonable proposition. I know we've discussed this before. The conditions are covered in 11 conditions we've put on this permit, which includes no flashing light or driver distraction, no flood lighting or illumination, and that's important. No reflection or animation, no bunting or streamers, no moving parts, and importantly, we want to see it kept in good condition. So again, I'm happy to support the recommendation. It has been a difficult one for us as a council, but the other 2 were in rural landscapes, and I think we had good reason to be able to refuse those. This one, I didn't think we had a good enough reason to refuse it, so I will support the recommendation as outlined in this report tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Delahanty. Mr. Douglas.
Yes, thank you. I probably echo Administrator Delahanty's view about this particular application. I too was not at all happy about the previous applications and value the rural landscape. And I don't want to have signs that are not even relevant to that particular landscape. I feel is just a mismatch. But I've been here, I've looked at it carefully, and as Mr. Delahanty said before, it is almost a mini industrial strip where this sign is going to be located. And I think that's quite a different scenario for me. So I am happy to support this with the recommendations.
Okay, that has been moved and seconded. We're going to make history here this evening because I think, as I've indicated previously, I don't support this application and I'm not going to be voting in favour of it. I think it's probably the first time in our period here that we actually have had a split vote. But I think it's not, and I commend our planners, it's not based on planning grounds at all. I guess from my point of view, I have a philosophical problem with the proliferation of billboards right around the country. And God help us if we ever get to a state like New South Wales, where we have, our highways that are littered with billboards. And I guess from that point of view, it astounds me that our road authorities don't take a far stronger stand on these. If this actually related to the business that was located on that particular site, I wouldn't have a problem, but this is not. This is an advertising billboard, and I guess it's a philosophical problem that I have with it. So, but that is in no way any sort of criticism about the recommendation or the views of anybody else. I guess that just simply reflects a personal view that I have in relation to advertising signage. So I'm going to put the motion. The motion is, I'm not going to read it. It has been read out by Mr. Delahanty. The motion is on page 41 and 42. And I'm going to put those in favour of the motion. Say aye.
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 Against is myself, so that motion is carried. Okay, moving on to item. We've finished our substantive items this evening. We don't have any items under the use of the common seal, notices of motion, or urgent business, or confidential business. Before I close the meeting, can our manager of governance, property, and risk is sitting in the background, I believe. Megan, can you put your video on, please? Oh, this will test. Is she listening? Yes, she is. You hadn't gone to sleep there, Megan. Megan has this is Megan's final meeting in the role. I guess I just want to say that, and I deliberately kept it to the end of the meeting. Megan has sat behind these meetings to make sure they all run smoothly, and every one of them has. Many thanks to Megan and of course David, who's there as well. But Megan, it's one of the delights, but it's also one of the challenges of rural councils, that we have talented officers that come through our organisations and then move on to bigger and better things. To me, that's a plus. It's a challenge for small councils, but I think it's a great opportunity for us where we can take young staff members, develop their skills, get the benefit of their passion and drive, and then move on to bigger and better things. Megan is leaving us to join a much larger council, a major step up for her. So Megan, I want to say thank you to you for the extraordinary work that you have done. For supporting us in your relatively short period with us. I congratulate you on your new appointment, and I know that you are going to be a huge success wherever you go. So thank you for your great support. And of course, we have Susan sitting there in the background. Susan is stepping up and is going to be filling Megan's shoes for a while at least, for the next little while. So thank you, Megan, for your support and the work that you have done in transforming this element of the council. And we wish you all the very, very best for the future. With those words, I'm going to now close the meeting. It is 7:03. We didn't quite make it till before 7 o'clock, so that's not too bad.
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
Can I just make a quick comment to I dropped out there a little bit, but I just want to endorse what you've said about Megan. I think I've really valued her contributions to me personally, but also to the council. Her knowledge and skills have been invaluable to assist all of us in her short time with us. So I also agree and say, best of luck for the future. We hope you do well. Thank you.
And from me, Megan, as well.
Okay, there you go. So from all this, well done, Megan. And but I've got a message you've got to take down to the Hume City Council, and I'll chat to you about that before the end of the week. Okay, thank you all for your attendance, and and to members of the public who've joined us this evening. I hope you found this evening's discussion informative and helpful. And if you haven't been able to watch this evening, I understand, or I believe, that the recording of this tonight's meeting will be posted on Council's website, so anybody can go back and check some of the things that were said and the decisions that were made. So thank you all, and I wish you all good night.